I thought, f it, and asked for more money using the exact script in the book for all 3 of my jobs. Worst case, maybe I'd lose 1 or 2 of them. Now, if you met me 3 months earlier, this would surprise you because I am one of the least confrontational people out there. I apologize to people when they bump into me. And sadly, before this, I had never asked for a raise in my life, instead getting pay increases by getting a second and third 9 to 5. That is, until I saw a YouTube ad. And it was Chris Voss, an FBI negotiator, talking about how basically everything in life is a negotiation. When you cross the street, that is a negotiation. And whether I liked it or not, this was a skill I might as well get good at. I immediately bought the book and powered through it within a day or 2, and just by the first chapter, I could tell that this was completely transforming how I was having conversations generally, let alone negotiations. And towards the end of the book, he actually gives you a line-by-line script to negotiate salaries. So when I finished, I sent a meeting invite to each one of my bosses, and this is exactly what I said. But first, let's learn a thing or two. There's no such thing as compromise. Chris Voss tells a great story. 2 parents are in an argument, their son is about to graduate, and they're trying to pick what he's going to wear for the pictures that will last for their entire lives. The dad wants him to wear black shoes, and the mom wants him to wear brown to match his belt. They reach an impasse, tempers flare, and then the son has a brilliant idea. What if I wear 1 brown shoe and 1 black shoe? And no matter how ridiculous it sounds, this is how most compromises end up going down. Neither party is leaving the negotiation happy. And this feels like how most of us live our lives. Half heard, half satisfied, half paid. And that's primarily because most of us think negotiation is about winning, outsmarting, outlasting, outbluffing. But the real negotiation is not to bulldoze the other side, nor give up enough to where you're resentful, but instead, master negotiators seem to find a situation where both parties are leaving happy. And Chris Voss states in his book that non-confrontational people are actually better at this. But why? Because we're quiet and because we listen. And we shut up long enough for the other party to tell us exactly what they want. And this book breaks it down with hostage negotiations, with each chapter starting off with a life or death scenario. So if these techniques can be used to get criminals to surrender, surely they can be used to get your boss to give you a raise. So before I went into those meetings, I had to understand a few critical things. The first is how understanding is actually communicated, and it's not by words. See, Chris Voss cites the 738-55 rule, which was found by Albert Morabian out of the University of California. The understanding that we get from people is 55% from our body language, 38% from our tone, and then only 7% from the actual words that we're saying. Now, I've heard this before, but this is one of the things that you just write off and don't actually understand entirely. So let me show it in action. I'm going to say the sentence 3 times, in each one exhibiting a different tone and body language to see if the meaning communicated is different. I think we should talk about compensation based on my performance this year. I think we should talk about compensation based on my performance this year. I think we should talk about compensation based on my performance this year. I'm slightly overdoing it, but I think you get the point. You can say exactly the right words and still fail if the delivery is wrong. And one of the main differences is what I did with my face. Smile. Something which I'm actually not good at, given the fact that I have been cursed with. So to combat this, I practiced smiling while asking for money. And not a fake grin, but an actual relaxed smile that says, I'm comfortable, you should be too, and give me more money. And truly, confidence is one of the easiest things to fake. And the main thing that Chris Voss talks about besides smiling is the late night DJ voice. And this is fun to practice. Imagine you are a late night radio host on a smooth jazz radio station. And the main key is to lower your register and talk slowly. Naturally, we have a tendency when we're nervous to speed up our speech to get all the words out before we forget what they are. But what we tend to forget is people are listening to us. We have the stage, and things like pauses can have a dramatic impact. You can get them to hang on every single word that you say, and you can make the mundane sound dramatic with the right pacing. Yesterday, I took the biggest dump of all time. It clogged the toilet with no TP, and that's actually a pretty regular occurrence for me. And it all starts with controlling your breath. Slow, deep breaths, calm the voice, and calm your hands. Then speaking slower than feels natural, and lowering your voice at the end of sentences. A downward inflection, as Chris Voss calls it. And the reason being that most people's voices go up at the end of sentences, which start to make everything sound like a question. I think I deserve a raise versus I think I deserve a raise. The one with a downward inflection starts to sound like a fact instead of a question. And you can practice this pretty easily just by recording yourself and seeing how the phrase ends. And after a few practice repetitions, you'll start to get the hang of it. And then what I did, just to make sure that it could be duplicated in a real scenario, I called a friend and had them assess it, doing a mock interview of sorts and recording it to make sure, are you going too fast? Are you taking pauses? And are you ending with the downward inflection? And I kept practicing this until asking for more money was as easy as ordering coffee. But sadly, you can do all of that and still fail if you can't follow these two smooth brain principles. The first one being mirroring. And this is one of those things that you've probably heard before, but for good reason. It is absurdly effective no matter how stupid it sounds. And it even works when someone knows what you're doing. There's a great story in the book where Chris is on the phone with his brother, and there's some sort of family drama, and they're trying to get to the bottom of it. Now, Chris is doing most of the talking over the course of the call, but his brother is being very supportive, understanding, and asking good questions. And after they hang up, Chris leans back, satisfied, but then realizes something. For the entire 30-minute duration of the call, his brother had not contributed a single original thought. All he did was repeat back Chris's last few words to him. But despite that, Chris felt heard, understood, and like his brother was brilliant for coming up with the eventual solution. But his brother was just mirroring, a tactic that he teaches people how to do himself. And it's almost embarrassingly simple. During a conversation, we repeat back the last few words that someone said or summarize what they said back to them. And after we do it, shut up and let them speak. They'll elaborate, give you more information, or clear up confusion if there was any. And after you have let them talk, encouraged by mirroring, you're usually going to come upon an emotion that they are feeling, which is usually linked to exactly what they want out of the negotiation. Bring it up. But instead of saying, I think you're feeling upset, rephrase it as, it seems like you're frustrated, or it looks like you're under a lot of pressure right now. In this slight shift from I to it seems, looks, feels, lowers people's defense as you're not accusing, you're observing. And here's the wild part. Again, like mirroring, even if you get it wrong, people will just correct you and then keep talking. So it's a win-win. So with this psychological toolkit, I felt like I was finally ready for those conversations. So here's what I actually said. But before, we need to remember that this is a special situation. Due to the fact that I had 3 jobs, I needed to engineer a way for slightly more pay with a negligible increase in my workload, as opposed to a drastic increase in pay with a drastic increase in workload, which is actually more doable because companies really only care about their bottom line. So here's how I did it, melded with Chris Voss's suggestions. 3 steps. First is to prepare. Before going into the meeting, I needed to research what the salary range is for this position and pick a number, but he doesn't suggest a specific number, instead using a range, where the bottom of the range is what you're actually looking for out of the negotiation. And instead of using round numbers like 100,000 or 110,000, picking specific numbers like 103,500, which sounds like you did more research and like there's less flexibility in the number. So I had a range for each one of my jobs, and I put those in my back pocket. And then when we enter the negotiation, I tried using an accusation audit. Kind of absurd, but it's basically listing out every negative thing that your boss could say about you. It sounds insane, and I meant to only test it with one of my bosses, but it worked so well that I ended up using it in every scenario. So I opened it up like this. I wanted to talk about a potential salary increase, and I know that this sounds selfish. You might even think that I'm ungrateful, asking for more during a time when we're all stretched so thin. And after I said that, I tried my hardest not to say anything. I was sweating, heart was beating out of my chest. But according to the book, the discomfort you're feeling is them processing what you just said. So don't rob them of that time. Now next, they'll usually come back saying something like, the budget doesn't allow for it, or whatever. And then you can hit them with a label. It seems like you're being asked to do more with less lately. And then again, shut up and let them talk. And then before we start to talk numbers, we gotta do what Chris Voss calls negotiating your success, information gathering. I asked, what are the 3 to 5 most important things I need to be doing for this role? And if you're overemployed or want to severely reduce your workload, this is also gold, because whatever list of tasks they give you is a get out of work free card for anything else, which is great because even if you come out of the meeting without getting a raise, you can then reduce your workload down to just what they said. And by asking them what you should work on, you're no longer someone who's just asking for more, you're someone who's trying to deliver better results. And after we've been given this blueprint, only then can we pivot into numbers. With something like, given that I'm delivering on these top priorities, what would fair compensation look like? Notice that we didn't say a number. We want to try as hard as possible to let them anchor the negotiation. If they give you one, great, but they probably won't. So if they give you some pushback, then have a few lines ready in your pocket, like, you probably know the budget better than I do, or what's the normal range for someone in this position? And if they keep pressing you to give a number, then give your range that we wrote down earlier. Based on my research and responsibilities, I think fair compensation would be $103,500 to $117,200. Notice we keep going back to that word fair. That's something that Chris Voss brought up numerous times, and then we're going to use that same word every time they give us pushback or the kind of corporate non-answer. That's a fair point, but how am I supposed to do that? Which then forces them to explain their plan or realize that they don't actually have one. And that's really the whole conversation. 15 minutes or less. I ended up getting a small raise at 2 out of 3 of my jobs, but more importantly, I had increased clarity on what I wasn't going to do, which was everything outside of the scope that they gave me during those meetings. And you've heard it a million times, but it's true. Ask and you shall receive. The only question is, what are you going to ask for? I know what I'm going to ask for. Subscribe.